didn't tell her about the 98. She doesn't know where I'm banking it, where I'm investing it, where I'm blowing it, what I'm doing with it. All she knows about is my budget that is $2 a week, and then I've gone over and then I'm in a deficit. And to pay off that extra $1 a week we're spending, because our budget's $2 and we spent $3, because she doesn't know about the other $98 that I really made that week, she's going to have to go out and get another job to pay off that debt. This is what the state of Texas, that Travis County, that Austin, Texas does. In 1998, in the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the state of Texas had a $435 billion surplus. A $435 billion surplus. It was right there on page 8, on page 7, on page 6, just like the 1999 version. Right there in their own report, ladies and gentlemen. Right there in their own report for the whole world to see. Every major media outlet gets a copy of this. They print up hundreds of thousands of them for the state of Texas. You pay for it. It goes out to all the major bond houses, all the major mutual funds, all the major companies like Xerox and Ford and you name it. Monsanto's. They all get it. This is the stuff that city managers and county managers and the financial directors talk about. This is the stuff they live, the stuff they breathe. They had $435 billion in Texas in surplus. And by surplus, I mean the Roman Empire had, had 1 million slaves at one time, but did they have a surplus? No, they always wanted more. Wino's got 2 bottles of whiskey, but is that a surplus? No, he always wants more. The point is, these aren't even surpluses to them. They want more. So back in 98, remember Bush was having the big fight with the Democrats on the surface over the $6.9 billion surplus. We had this huge surplus. Bush was bragging, look how conservative, fiscally conservative we've been. We have this surplus. And there was this big phony fight. They finally decided to give back Texans $2.2 billion in sales tax cuts. Okay? This is what they did. I mean, folks, this is so simple, it's hard to explain. So they were telling you about a $6.9 billion surplus, extra money, and then had a big fight over where it should be spent or if it should be given back to you, when they really had $435 billion that was profits on investments. And we're going to have Walter Burien on a little bit later. We're going to go into great detail on this. It's one of the biggest secrets around, just like the Federal Reserve, being private and having private stockholders and being run for profit. There are no reserves. You can't audit it. It's just there, printing the money, ordering the Federal Treasury to do so. This is the scam. This is the biggest game in town. This is how they're running the whole ball of wax. This is how they're ruling over us. And the big news is, get ready for this, that they own over half the stock market, that is state, county, city, and the federal government, that they own 70+% of Xerox, using an example, 80% plus of Ford. This is years old numbers. They own the majority of every publicly traded company of any size. They own almost all of the stock in the Dow Industrial 30, the top 30 stocks. They own most of the NASDAQ. They own a large portion of privately held companies like Dell. They own a large portion of the stock that Gates hasn't turned loose of in Microsoft, in Intel. Motorola is almost completely owned by the government. This is the definition of organized crime. But yet they sell you at the city level when the city of Austin has billions of dollars of surplus. Capital Metro does. They're pulling in billions every year. They tell you you got to have a tax increase or the schools are going to close. We got to have a tax increase or the potholes won't get filled. We got to have a tax increase or there won't be emergency radios in the fire trucks and EMS, in the ambulances. A patent, erroneous lie. Now you understand why government is so-called privatizing utilities and privatizing hospitals and privatizing roads and privatizing everything because they already own it all. Any sector they start privatizing means they own over half of it. Like when you hear out in California the big power crunch, whether it's because of privatization, the cities and counties in the state own 80%. That was even in the Associated Press today, of those power plants. Now, wait a minute. Before so-called privatization, it was actually privately held predominantly. Up is down, down is up, black is white, white is black. I want you to think about the magnitude of this. Because when they tell you that you've got to pay more taxes because of the deficit on the budget, that's like if I made $100 a week and I told my wife, our budget is $2, and that's all she knew about. She didn't know about the other $98 I'm making a week. All she knew about was the $2. We go over that budget of $2, she's going to have to get a second job because she believes that we're in the hole. When in truth, I'm investing and saving or blowing $98 a week, and she doesn't even know about it because in the economic world today, everything is budgets. Take the federal government, $34 trillion surplus. You count state and local and water districts and schools in surpluses, that is in liquid cash each year, profit off of investments. Profit off of investments. $60+ trillion, federal, state, local. Because the budget is the money they have coming in to pay the actual services. You'll take a state like New Jersey in 1989. $17 billion in bills and services and lighting and power for the government buildings, for the roads, for everything. They made $80+ billion in profits on investments. So you had $60+ billion being reinvested. It's an endless cycle. Within another 5 years, the government will own all of the stock that you do not privately held, and what the people hold is going to be such incredible peanuts compared to it, it won't even count. Now, how many of you knew that big companies, when they have stockholder meetings, have city managers and portfolio managers and folks from the National Association of Counties and Cities and governors there as the top people in that hall with that CEO up there? How many of you knew that people from Travis County, top officials, travel the country weekly to New York and Boston and Los Angeles and even here in Austin to go to these stockholder meetings and to see how their stock is doing? How many of you knew that? And here's the really big bombshell. How many of you knew that with the $60+ trillion surplus that is going on right now with state, federal, and local, that you could have all the government services that are here, expand them according to population, expand them taking inflation into account? You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that we would never have to pay taxes again, never pay taxes again, and that we would get a yearly or monthly, depending on how we wanted it, annuity check in the tens of thousands of dollars yearly. Now, you don't believe that? Alaska does it. Alaska has a system close to what we're talking about. And their people this year got $3,000. And that's just a small bit of what the oil and gas revenue is that the state takes in. And the people don't even pay taxes in Alaska. 1 million people living in Alaska, and they're not even paying taxes, and they're getting paid by the government. And that's not welfare, folks. That's not, you can't have a man in the house, and we're going to break up your family, and you got to put your kids on Ritalin and Prozac, and then we'll give you enough to barely live in a rundown rat hole that the government operates.